activity. At this point in time, please remain standing as I invite to the podium the Royal St. Lucia Police Force Chaplaincy to invoke the presence of the Almighty God. Chaplaincy.
May I invite everyone to adopt the appropriate posture. Almighty and gracious Father, you are keeper or creator or protector. I invite your presence within us, among us, and around us. May your spirit always prevail today and eternally in every thought we have, every action we exercise. May your grace always bring goodwill and good sense in every interaction we have as a team, that every plan thought out and executed may go towards creating the safe environment that we wish for ourselves and this country. As we prepare to unveil this new facility, which is supposed to go towards creating a safer environment for this country, may it be appreciated and cared for and continue for generations to come. In Jesus' name I ask, Amen, Amen, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, I would like to draw your attention and request everyone to keep standing in respect to our beloved nation, as our very own Royal St. Lucia Police Band does a rendition of our anthem. At this moment, I now invite Inspector of Police Nigel Jawahir to do the welcome remarks. Can you please sit?
I'll just say.
Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Youth Economy, and Minister of Justice and National Security, Honorable Alvina Reynolds, President of the Senate of St. Lucia, Honorable Claudius Francis, Speaker of the House of Assembly of St. Lucia, members of Cabinet, Commissioner of Police, Mr. Vangard, Permanent Secretaries, Executive of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, other Gazette officers, colleagues, distinguished guests, members of the community, good morning. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome you to this significant occasion as we mark a memorous step forward in our commitment to justice, public safety, and the respectful treatment of all individuals in our care. This new facility is more than brick and mortar. It symbolizes progress, a reflection of modern policing value rooted in dignity, fairness, transparency, and accountability. Our aim is to provide a space where officers can perform their duties professionally, safely, while also recognizing the humanity of those in custody. How we treat individuals in this moment speak volume about the integrity and compassion of the justice system, not just in terms of security and efficiency, but in our commitment to uphold human rights. We have seen firsthand how gap in our custodial infrastructure impact justice. For too long, we struggle to house arrested persons and present them to court in a timely manner, not due to legal delays, but because we lack adequate, secure facilities. This was not a logistical problem. It was a barrier to justice. That's why this new center is so important. It represents our promise to deliver justice that is timely, fair, and humane. To the community we serve, we hope this facility strengthens your trust in our service we will provide. We remain committed to transparency, continued improvement, and fairness at every stage of the justice system. This center is a center where it will be safe, it will be properly managed, and we thank the government and people of St. Lucia. Thank you all for being here. Welcome, and may this occasion be remembered with pride and purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector Jawahir. I now invite to the podium the Honorable Richard Frederick, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for housing and local government and parliamentary representative for Castries Central, for some brief remarks. Honorable Richard Frederick.
Good morning, everybody. Prime Minister, you have not given the audience breakfast yet. Morning, everybody. That sounds a little better. It sounds better indeed. Let me ask you to accept that protocol has already been established, and I don't want to take too much time in reiterating the presence of our esteemed guests, save and except the Prime Minister is second to none. And so I must acknowledge the presence of my Honorable Prime Minister, Prime Minister Philip Joseph Pierre. To give a brief history of how custody suites came about, it was in my previous tenure as a Minister of Physical Development and the others that I was approached by two police officers whose names I would prefer to forget at this time. They came to me and they said that they have no facility to hold prisoners. In fact, the facilities they had at Central were inadequate. And most times you would have 20 fellas or 20 persons, 20 prisoners in one cell. The Honorable Stephenson King was then Prime Minister. I took the plea of wanting a facility to him, and without hesitation, Prime Minister King then made the funding available for the construction of custody suites. I want you all to give Prime Minister then, Stephenson King, a round of applause for me, please. And so, Custody Suites was built and was touted as the largest prisoner holding facility in the Eastern Caribbean. No other country in the Eastern Caribbean could have boasted of having a facility, a standalone facility that is not a prison, strictly for housing prisoners. And so it was a very, very sad day. Custody Suites did what it had to do in terms of ensuring that there was a positive indentation in criminal activity in and around the city and its environs. But it was a very, very sad day when I got a call from a police officer who was almost in tears. I asked him what was wrong, and he said to me, "You will not believe, Mr. Frederick, I was outside the political or governmental periphery then." And he said to me, "Mr. Frederick, you will not believe that we are here at work. We are here at work at Custody Suites, that ACs are being removed, gates are being removed, there are prisoners in custody, and up to now we have been told absolutely nothing." I said, "Really?" It wasn't too long after I got a call again, and they indicated to me that the IT men had arrived and they were taking off the telephones. The contractor was already removing windows when the then Commissioner Daisy called and said to vacate Custody Suites immediately. That is how it happened. So when I hear Inspector Jawai speak to treatment of persons within the judiciary, it is a sad thing, but that was the kind of treatment that was meted out to persons whom the authorities then believed did not matter. But yes, they did. And so the police at the time had to grapple with the prisoners who were in custody at the time demolition commenced. And they had to scramble not only to find places to put them, but to find vehicles to facilitate the escort to the various places. They were taken to Marigot, to Ancillary, to Grosile, to Babono, and all over the place without any kind of prior knowledge that they would turn up at work expecting to do what they did on a daily basis and would have been treated with that kind of treatment, basically squandering, looking for space and vehicles to house prisoners. So this place has had its history. It has had a very rich history. Now on the schedule or on the agenda, I noticed the name, what's it? Community Centralized Safety Center. I think this flies in the face of the historic significance of the establishment that once existed here. I say so because, you know, reference to a facility with a very short name is attractive. When a police officer has to give evidence and he says, "Your Worship, I then took the prisoner to the Community Central Safety Center," the magistrate has to write all that. The typist has to type all that. Whoever it is, I am asking, you can use that name for academic purposes or for administrative purposes, but for reference purposes, I ask that we still retain the name Custody Suites. Because reference, "Where is your husband now?" says to a lawyer, Custody Suites. "Where do I go see him?" Custody Suites. Community Centralized Safety Center. It's too long. Too long. I'm sure you all know there is a given journalist in this country, when he hit the international arena, to refer to him in a short and sweet name. You all know who I talk about? He used two words to describe him, to call himself by. He wasn't born that way. His surname was longer than now his first and last name. So you all know who it is. But when you are referring to establishments like that, you want the reference to it to be all-embracing. You want every person in society to be able to refer to it without having to bite their tongues. And so, even if we keep whatever is established for administrative purposes, for reference purposes, I plead, I ask that we still retain the reference to this facility as custody suites. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing more I can say. It is a very good job spearheaded by no other than the Honorable Prime Minister. You know, what is hypocritical in all of those things? We talk about crime, 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 crime. We talk about crime. We are chastised on crime. Yet the tools for fighting crime effectively, you take them away from us. You take them away from us and basically strengthen our inability. You know what it was for police officers? Making calls. How many prisoners you all have in Marshall? How many in Grosile? How many? And attempting to find space that did not exist to house prisoners. And rest assured, the criminal fraternity knew of the problems and so would have capitalized on it. That was what was pervasive. And even the police themselves had no choice unless the offense was one that carried a great degree of seriousness. They had no choice but to just release persons left, right, and center, only to go back on the streets to commit crime. So I thank the Almighty God. I thank him for sending the Prime Minister who listens and who takes the interest of all state facilities into account, and today we can basically say we have gotten rid of that problem of non-existent facility in which to house prisoners. It's a new day. I am hoping its use shall commence with immediacy and that we shall see a curtailment in the criminal activity, especially in the city circuit, Mr. Commissioner, of whom I hold in high esteem. So ladies and gentlemen, having said those few words, I just wish the users well, the police officers. The place is nice. I actually showed it on my show, and somebody called me, a female called me and said to me, Richard, I want to commit a crime. I say, you want to commit a crime? Why? Because I want to be taken to custody suites. Ladies and gentlemen, that speaks to the integrity of the facility which this government has provided for the police in an effort at crime fighting. I thank you all. God bless.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for your remarks. I now invite to the podium the Honorable Jeremiah Norbert, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for Home Affairs, Crime Prevention, and Persons with Disabilities. The Honorable Jeremiah Norbert.
No. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to adopt the protocol already established, but just like my former colleague did, my colleague before me, just like he did, I want to acknowledge the presence of our esteemed Prime Minister. And today gives me great joy to stand in his midst, a man who has led by example, a man who also celebrates 28 years in the political arena. At the time, I was only 7 years old when the Prime Minister made his entrance into the politics. And I don't know if my luck will be as good as his, and if 28 years from today I will still be there. But it is a feat that not many can say that they have arrived at that particular juncture. So Prime Minister, congratulations, and congratulations for the way that you have led, especially during the last 4 years and during my time working with you. It has been a pleasure. I know that you say you don't have long again, you want to go and do Papi Pip. However, I mean, I'm hoping that those of us around you can emulate the way that you've led, and for the next 28 years, the country can be led in the same direction. But today it gives me great joy to be part of this government, the government that will be opening the custody suites, an area where, you see, we are creatures of habit, and I already said custody suites, and as Richard says, it's always easier when you have just towards custody suites. So permit me if I deviate a little bit and I utilize the word custody suites. I want to just draw back on my own experience as a policeman and what the custody suites meant to us. I worked as a policeman for a decade, and I worked directly behind this building, about a stone throw away. And CID, or the Criminal Investigations Department, most times would be the agency or the department that utilizes the custody suites the most, because they are the one charged with investigating. And I remember how easy it was for us to pick up a man on Bridge Street, or on Brazil Street, or on Brogley Street, anywhere within the city. And within minutes, you could have him processed, take him to the custody suites and have him processed. And it really simplified the way in which police were able to conduct their operations. Even when I worked at the drug unit, it was an easy task to go out there and conduct your investigations, conduct operations, because you know when you came back, there was a proper housing area for persons who were detained. When custody suites was demolished for some unfounded reasons that never materialized, I received, that was just before the election, and I remember upon assuming office, I received calls from colleagues left, right, and center about the demolition of the custody suites. And what it did was really place pressure on the resources, what was already limited resources of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And Richard captured it well when he said you had to call Marchand, call Babuno, call Ancillary, call Marigo to see which one of the cells had space, given that this used to be the area where you could have housed the most prisoners. And what you had was instances where you allow somebody to get off on something that you may deem trivial, because the truth is, the amount of effort it's going to take to arrest a man, let's say on a Carnival Tuesday, you have an individual and you arrest him for possession of a dangerous weapon, which is a knife. Usually you could put him in custody suite on a Carnival Monday and you detain him and probably you CRD him and you allow him to go on Wednesday morning after you caution him, and now you have to just take this knife from this, withdraw the knife and tell this gentleman to go. And what happens tomorrow is that he has a greater conviction within himself. He has a motivation within himself because he knows, here's what, if the police arrest me, there's no area to house me, so they're just going to let me go. And it really made the police look bad. It really, really made the police look bad. And I knew, and as Prime Minister always says, we know the commitment and the dedication of the men and women of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And I know that no man or woman wants to give nobody a slap on the wrist to go, especially for an offense that may repeat itself. But sometimes you're left with no choice because you really don't have the housing area. And especially when you have mass crowd events like Carnival or Jazz or Square, where you have most of the surrounding areas with cells already fully occupied. And you've left in a situation where you cannot overpack a cell. You must take into consideration the humanity aspect. And most times, you're left with no choice. So today, it gives me great joy, not just as a minister with responsibility for crime prevention, but as a former policeman, as a man who worked across there with the other policemen. And I know people, I work with Mr. Nigel Jawai at the time he was at the Criminal Investigations Department. And he too, I saw when he spoke this morning, he spoke with utmost sincerity when he did the welcome remarks, because he knew the challenges, or he knows personally the challenges. And now that he is at prosecution, he can tell you that there are instances where even his work is affected because there is no housing area. So today, this is not just a project or political project. This project has tremendous significance for the men and women of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And it speaks to the commitment of the Prime Minister. It speaks to the vision of this Prime Minister. Some people come, they destroy. This Prime Minister comes and he builds. And Prime Minister, I'm happy to be part of a team that builds. And today, it's just a continuation of what we have seen. This Prime Minister have given the most resources to the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And albeit we've had our few challenges, we've had our few hurdles, this Prime Minister continues. I don't know if it's because he continues to boast that his father was a policeman, or whether he's still surrounded with policemen like myself, former policemen like myself and Richard in his cabinet. But this Prime Minister is committed to seeing the holistic development of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And he's not committed in just words, he puts it into action. And this translation today is a true action of what this government stands for. We believe that we need to create an environment where officers can go and fight crime effectively. And this is one step towards creating, this is one step further towards creating that environment. I know very soon, when you look at the steps that we've taken, the bulletproof vest for every single policeman. Those of you sitting in front of me today may not understand the importance of this, because you may not have found yourself in a position or a situation where you may have to wear a bulletproof vest. But those individuals charged with going out there, those individuals charged with being the face of crime fighting in this country, they can speak to the importance of having your own bulletproof vest. Sometimes it is a bit indignified to take a bulletproof vest from one individual and pass it to a next one and pass it to a next one. It is like you're telling me, it's not your brother. I understand that, yes, there is an esprit de corps within the police force. But we have to also take into consideration the humanitarian aspect, the hygiene aspect. You sweat in a bulletproof vest, let it be yours. Let it be yours. So I'm happy that we continue to provide for the police. I encourage those individuals charged with working here at the custody suites. I encourage them to make the most. I know that they will make the most of this building, and it is more than just a building, as I said. And I encourage you to treat it like your own, because it comes at a cost for the government. Prime Minister could have chosen, in a time where you have so much demands, he could have chosen to spend money on so many things, but yet still, at every given juncture, he continues to spend money on the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And it just speaks to his commitment towards crime fighting. So with these few words, I want to say that I'm happy to be here, and I'm thankful to be part of a team that continues to put the people of St. Lucia and the Royal St. Lucia Police Force first. Thank you very much.
At this present time, let us all welcome our very own Royal St. Lucia Police Band to perform the musical.
Thank you to the best band in the Caribbean, probably the world. Oh, yes. I now invite to the podium our amazing and philosophical Acting Deputy Commissioner of Police, Dr. Mashama Sili.
Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, Economic Development and the Youth Economy, and Minister for Justice and National Security of St. Lucia, the Honorable Alvina Reynolds, President of the Senate of St. Lucia, the Honorable Claudius Francis, Speaker of the House of Assembly of St. Lucia, members of Cabinet and other parliamentarians, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Cabinet Secretary, Permanent Secretaries, Commissioner of Police, Mr. Vungard, Mr. Jim Xavier, DPS for National Security, and other Deputy Permanent Secretaries and Chief Technical Officers, gazetted officers and ranks of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, the Director of Bodley Correctional Facility, specially invited guests, the media, my apologies, Chief Fire Officer, and the Chief Ports Police Officer, good morning. It is indeed my distinct honor and privilege to address you to this significant occasion, the official opening of the Centralized Community Safety Center, also known as Custody Suites. Last year, I participated in an interview concerning the opening of Carnival, and I was asked a question. Where will you detain persons who break the law? And my response was that there are 15 police stations across the island, and so a person could find themselves anywhere from Grosile to Labre Police Station. This year, my response will be different. Today marks more than the reopening of a building. It is a renewed commitment to justice, human rights, accountability, and public trust. This detention center is an essential part of our law enforcement and judicial process, not merely a place of detention, but a space where dignity, due process, and professional policing standards must be upheld at all times. The opening of this facility represents a decisive shift due to the upgrades, which will ensure a safer environment for detainees, police officers, and visitors alike. And so we extend our deepest gratitude to the Honorable Prime Minister and the Government of St. Lucia for providing this modern facility, which comes with a greater responsibility. The Royal St. Lucia Police Force continues to evolve as our commitment to community-focused policing, restorative justice, and human rights remains unwavering. We understand that public confidence is not earned by force, but by fairness and facilities such as this, which reflects our values in practice. Let us move forward with a renewed sense of purpose. Let the reopening of the suites be a reminder that our nation's safety and justice system must be anchored in integrity, compassion, and accountability. Let me close with the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "The time is always right to do what is right." May this facility be a place where principle is consistently upheld. Thank you, and may God bless our nation and the Royal St. Lucia Police Force.
Thank you so much, Deputy. I now invite to the podium our Commander-in-Chief, our esteemed leader, Mr. Vungard, the Commissioner of police.
Nimble, me nimble and quick. Go tell the whole of them me say how to do it, jam and me dimble. Jaja know me simple. Never did I am honor. To all of the massive, I man I set an example. Vern God, the massive impossible. Jada man me quick and me full of lyric. And you looking at me basket, you know me have it. If a man would want to test me, I go put him in a holy par dollars and the thing counterfeit. Prime Minister. Prime Minister. I would like your esteemed permission to accept the twice established protocol. Let me be the first to admit that there is no panacea in our current atmosphere of disorder, where freestyle seems to be the most admired approach to all services. Parents, freestyle parenting, fishermen, freestyle the navigation of the dangerous waters and seas. Even epidemics are being freestyled, and the count of lives they ply. The Royal St. Lucia Police Force, a creature of our Constitution, fortunately does not enjoy that luxury. So we are bound to plan, to prepare, to operate with procedures designed around our rights and responsibilities. I have traversed the current of repair to the injured law enforcement environment, and though the road has been long, we are getting there. We have moved from an era of penal servitude. We have moved from an era of penal servitude to corrections, supported by the repair of most of our police infrastructure and the construction of new police facilities island-wide. Today unveils another one of the planned approaches to mitigate against the negative national security environment, one which considers the fundamental rights enshrined in our Constitution and the maintenance of our inherent rights to dignity and humane treatment. So we begin with a change in nomenclature from what it was to the Centralized Community Safety Center, a change of nomenclature. A modern approach from a modern ministry. In fact, a novel ministry specific to national security, eliciting a modern approach to managing policing. I've had the opportunity to witness the plans, follow the construction, approve the equipment, and this was certainly not freestyle. It was planned. On the contrary, and from the perspective of a law enforcement professional, the standards are met. I want to take the opportunity to thank this modernized leadership with the scientific approach to managing a modernized ministry. On behalf of the people of St. Lucia and all the staff and members of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, as the Commissioner of Police, I say thanks and take great pride in commissioning the Centralized Community Safety Center. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
At this juncture, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our featured speaker, the one and only Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, Economic Development and the Youth Economy, Minister for Justice and National Security of St. Lucia.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me recognize my cabinet colleagues, the permanent secretaries. I see members of the diplomatic corps, permanent secretaries, deputy permanent secretaries, president of the Senate, members of the police high command, including the commissioner, the head of the Ports Police, Fire Service, and Borderley, members of the police band, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, permit me to outline the process by which this building came into being. Although that may not help, because the propaganda and the misinformation will continue. The procurement plan proposed for this building was prepared on the 23rd of January 2023 after preliminary discussions in the second half of 2022. In that plan, the project completion date was 20th December 2023, and the project closure date was February 2025. However, work started on the 4th of September 2023 because of various challenges. This project was constructed through a direct public procurement method. After an evaluation on the 6th of March 2023 from the Ministry of Physical Development. There were 4 tenders. The tenders were opened on the 24th of January 2023. The tenders were as follows. 1 for $5,081,757.99. The other for $4,013,632.83. The other for $4,022,673.82. And the other for $4,279,454.53. 2 of the bids were unresponsive because of lack of financial capabilities. The architect's estimate from the Ministry of Physical Development was $5,084,432.86. That was the architect's estimate. The tenders were open, and the bid for $4,022,673.82, the contract was awarded to the company that presented that bid. A request was made to the Minister of Finance for public procurement, for direct public procurement, on the 6th of March 2023. And the tender was awarded to the lowest bidder. It was built on a design finance contract, which means that the contractor would provide the finance and the government would pay over a period. After finance charges, the contract was awarded for $4,579,080, and it was awarded to IDC Caribbean Limited. That was the contractor, and no one else. The contract and the public procurement process was reviewed by the Attorney General on the 23rd of August, 2023. The building comprises of the following: 8 holding cells, prisoner intake rooms, ID parade, an armory, a detention area, 3 interview rooms, 4 offices, 2 dormitories, a carport, and 2 ramps. It also has access for the differently able, and it's arguably one of the most modern detention centers in the Caribbean. But I want you to see that investment not only as a building, and the naysayers will tell you that the Minister of Finance spent $5 million. And there are some increased costs because of additions that had to be made. So the naysayers will tell you that the government has spent $5 million, and why didn't they use that to reduce the cost of living, to buy food, or for health care? That is what you will hear. You will hear that that money should be used for health care. But I'll tell you what, this building may cause this country for savings that are unimaginable. When I made the point that police officers had to be carrying suspects all over the country and release them because there was no place to put them, as usual, the prophets of gloom were on the loose. Misinformation, innuendo, instead of getting to the point that the custody suites on the 23rd of March, 5 years ago, was destroyed without the permission of anyone except one man. That's a fact. But this building is an investment in humanity. I'll tell you why. Several times, people lose their tempers. And my dad always told me, any man who loses his temper is a fool. He says, when you get annoyed, swallow your spit, take a pause, and come back. This is why if I seem never to be annoyed, because I follow my father's advice. Take a pause, think, and then act. So I never act hastily, even though sometimes there's reason for me to act hastily, and there's reason for me to be annoyed. But the mistake that you can make is to take my quietness for weakness. It's a strength of character, it's a strength of purpose, and it's a determination to do what is right. So many people, many lives may have been saved and will continue to be saved by this center. I'll tell you why. Sometimes someone may have a domestic dispute and tempers flare and the police are called, and only what is needed is to take one of the people away from them, keep them away for a night, and when they come back, all the love returns. Sometimes two guys may be on the street arguing and quarreling. One of them leaves, goes home to get a weapon which he should not have, and return and causes more problems to himself and the victim. All is needed is to get him, to put him somewhere, let him cool out for a night or two, and when he comes back, he forgets all what he intended to do. Sometimes men lose their temper for no reason. All you need is somewhere to take them, to cool out, and return them to their homes. And you would have avoided a catastrophe. I said last week that it costs about $100,000 per gunshot. And as usual, the prophets of doom, they were on, saying that needs investigation. You know, it's a pity how people always take things and for their own personal political reasons stretch it. All I was saying was the direct and the indirect costs with the excess of $100,000. The direct and indirect costs. So the cost of this building would save us millions of dollars in the long run. And this is not only a detention center. It's not only a prison. It's a place where you can avoid catastrophe. A place where murders can be avoided. A place where by this initial cooling period, you can avoid all the negative effects of crime just by having somewhere to keep these people. I want to thank the police. I want to thank the police high command. I want to thank the officers and members of the police force. And to tell them that this government will, next year, begin the construction of new police headquarters right there on that site. And that construction is not being done by me. When I say that sometimes I do not know something, again, the prophets of doom, I should know everything. Like I should know the weather. I should know the weather. I should know about policing. I should know about the prison. I should know about everything. I don't. All those who say they know everything, look at where they ended up. So, in the construction of the police headquarters, the cabinet has formed a committee of people who know about buildings, who know about what is needed in dormitories, what is needed where you can house the number of offices that the police have, and also, of course, somebody from the Ministry of Finance who must watch my back. Because, you know, if you have to look at what the police have inside there and what we put in view for them, and you come to the Prime Minister's office, you'll see such a difference. You'll wonder which office is which office, but that's for another show. So in the new police headquarters, there will be dormitories, there'll be offices, etc. And it would be near the detention center. So you see how the logistics will work. So no policeman will have to go underground to go in any prison. You have to go upground. You don't have to go underground, probably to look for any prison. There will be no underground prisons. The days of underground prisons are gone. We also
are constructing the House of Justice. Again, the House of Justice, the construction has begun. And again, it was built with consensus, with discussion, with people who know coming together and deciding on what has to happen. And the House of Justice are under construction and hopefully should be completed in 18 to 24 months. So, in terms of infrastructure, the Northern Police Headquarters started, continuing, again, built with consultation, and every step of the way, the police have been involved. And I want to tell them that in that building, there is going to be a range for the firearm practices. We just approved that this week. We moved the police to facilities, basically new facilities in Vieux-Fort last week. And these facilities, the building has almost been redone at a cost of possibly another $5 million. We hope that all the problems, or most of the problems there, will be solved. The Ansari police station has moved from where it was, and it did not become unfit for use on the 22nd of July, 2021. Didn't happen there. These things were happening for a long time. But we've moved them to another location in Ansari, and shortly we'll be announcing plans for the construction of a new Ansari police station. Whilst we continue improvements to all the police stations, including the one situated in Marsha. I want to thank the Ministry of Physical Development, the Minister, who I literally, I don't use the word I want to use, who I showed a lot of concern to get this building completed, because I was hearing the cries. His permanent secretary, the chief architect, and the staff of the Ministry of Physical Development. Without their help, we could not have had this building completed. So I want to thank them on behalf of the cabinet and the government of St. Lucia. We are, as the commissioner said, in a new era of crime and citizen security in this country. And yesterday, in fact, I think on Tuesday, we paid for the procurement, and the procurement cost is nearly in excess of $3 million for bulletproof vests and new belts for members of the Royal Police Force. And these belts had been clamored for years, because there had been complaints that the police cannot carry what they're supposed to carry on the belts because it caused problems to their backs, etc. And every policeman who needs a belt will have a belt in a short time. Every policeman who needs a belt will have a belt. I want to tell the police that when there is a reduction of crime in this country, that is not for the welfare, the benefit of any politician. So anybody who believes that when they neglect their duty, or when they try through direct or indirect means to cause things not to happen how it ought to happen, because they believe that the government
or the Prime Minister in particular, will be affected at the polls, that is a misthought. Because crime should never be used as a political tool or political weapon. Every man or woman has the right, and they reserve the right, to have their own political conviction, which you manifest on one day. And that day was the 22nd of July, 2021. So if you do your arithmetic right, and you add 5 years to that, you will know that that day will be here before July 2026. So we have a right to do that in the privacy and the secrecy of the ballot box. But it's unfair, and not unfair, or not harmful only to the Prime Minister, it's harmful to the society, to the country, when we deliberately have a responsibility which every policeman has, a serious responsibility of being able to withdraw somebody's freedom for 72 hours. It's a serious responsibility. A serious responsibility to halt crime, to stop people from suffering. When you take that responsibility and you use it for political reasons, because you believe that when you do it, some politician would get out of office. I want to urge the members of the police force to understand the seriousness of their job, not to allow misinformation, not to victimize each other for political reasons, not to create an environment where there is division because of political reasons. Division in the force should only be division among the corrupt and the non-corrupt. It should only be division among those who want to work and those who do not want to work. It should only be division among those who take their work seriously and those who do not take their work seriously. It should not be division because of political reasons, or because we assume or we presume that some of us support a particular political party. There should not be division because of that. The division should be on lines of principle, should be on lines of good behavior, should be on lines of achievement. And our role as a government is to create the enabling environment so that every police officer can operate and can work in a conducive environment. That is our role. That is my role as Minister of National Security. And the Commissioner was right. It's the first time that the police have an established Ministry of National Security. It's the first time that the police have an established ministry for permanent secretary and now a newly appointed deputy permanent secretary, and the whole line staff as every other ministry. Never happened before. It's the first time because of the seriousness in which we take citizen security. So I want to thank everyone for making this facility available and possible. I'm sure that the policemen on the ground will understand how it was without it. And I'm sure by its opening, we will avert many crimes and avert untold hardship to the people of St. Lucia, because there was no place to hold someone for a cooling out period. So we look forward to a new era or continued era of crime detection and citizen security. And I thank everyone. I thank the police because their task is not an easy task. It cannot be an easy task. So I want to thank them for their dedication to the cause. And let's work for a safer St. Lucia for us all. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, you shall now witness the official handing over of this amazing escort vehicle from our Prime Minister to our Commissioner of Police. Protocol officers, please assist. No, I think there is a... So, yeah. I think so. It's just a spiritual thing. Right. Yeah.
We're not done yet, huh? We're not done yet. We're not done yet.
They'll be back soon. They're just going to collect some prisoners next side at CID. Okay? Just a reminder, we still have 2 items left on the program: the unveiling of the plaque and the walkthrough of the facility, which will be conducted by our Prime Minister, cabinet members, along with the Commission, its executive, due to limited space and time. And then we will officially close with refreshments.
and gentlemen, I kindly ask that we all take our seats.
Is still going on?
We have now come to the final features for this morning's proceedings. We now have the blessing and unveiling of the plaque being led by Reverend Sherwin Griffith, along with the Honorable Prime Minister, Commissioner of Police, and Cabinet. Thank you. Protocol officers, please assist.
In front.
And just a gentle reminder, that will be followed immediately with the walkthrough of the facility. And ladies and gentlemen, due to time constraints and also space, it will be done by the Prime Minister, his cabinet, protocol officers, commissioner, executive, and immediately after the ceremony, you then could have the opportunity to tour the facility. Yes, executive.